The evening air felt crisp as Lily Jensen hurried down the street, checking her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. She tucked a strand of brown hair behind her ear and adjusted the collar of her thrift store blouse, the nicest one she owned. Her nursing textbooks weighed heavy in her backpack. She hadn't had time to drop them at her tiny apartment before this blind date her roommate had insisted on setting up. "It'll be good for you to get out," her roommate had said that morning, noticing how Lily had been buried in study materials for weeks. "You need to have some fun for once." Fun wasn't exactly in Lily's budget these days. Between tuition, rent, and the unexpected car repair last month, her bank account had been drained to almost nothing. She had exactly $5 in her wallet, and 3 days until her next paycheck from the campus coffee shop. But her roommate had been so excited about setting her up with this friend from economics class that Lily couldn't bring herself to cancel. The restaurant came into view. Nothing fancy, but definitely not fast food either. Lily's stomach tightened. She should have suggested meeting for coffee instead. Too late now. "I'll just order water and maybe the cheapest appetizer," she whispered to herself as she pulled open the heavy glass door. The host greeted her with a professional smile. "Table for one?" he asked. "Actually, I'm meeting someone." "A blind date?" The words felt strange coming out of her mouth. It had been over a year since her last relationship ended. She simply hadn't had time between classes, clinicals, and work. Name of the reservation? Chen. Michael Chen. The host nodded and led her to a small table near the center of the restaurant. Lily would have preferred something tucked away in a corner, but she settled into the chair, thanking the host as he handed her a menu. Her eyes immediately searched for the prices, and her heart sank. Even the appetizers cost more than she had in her wallet. She bit her lip, wondering if she could just order water and claim she wasn't hungry. The thought made her stomach growl in protest. She'd been too nervous to eat lunch. At the table next to hers sat a man in his mid-30s with a little girl who looked about 10. The man wore a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing a watch that probably cost more than Lily's monthly rent. The girl was focused on some homework spread across the table, her forehead wrinkled in concentration while her father patiently explained something about fractions. "So if you have 3/4 of a pizza, and you eat 1/4, how much do you have left?" the man asked his daughter. The girl thought for a moment. 2/4? Which is the same as 1/2. "Exactly right." The father beamed with pride, and Lily couldn't help but smile at their interaction. The man glanced up, catching Lily's eye for a brief moment. She quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught eavesdropping, and pretended to study her menu. But she couldn't focus on the words. Instead, her mind raced with calculations. If she put this dinner on her emergency credit card, would she be able to make the minimum payment? Would her roommate be able to spot her until payday? 15 minutes passed, then 20. Lily checked her phone several times, but there were no messages from Michael. She was beginning to wonder if she'd been stood up when a young man hurried through the door, scanning the room. He was handsome in a polished way, with gelled hair and a designer jacket that screamed, "Look at me." The host pointed in her direction, and the young man approached her table. "You must be Lily," he said, not bothering to introduce himself as he slid into the chair across from her. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane, and then I had to take this call from my broker about some investments." He didn't sound particularly sorry, and he hadn't even taken off his jacket yet before he was checking his phone again. "It's okay," Lily said softly, though it wasn't really. She'd been sitting alone for nearly half an hour, nursing a glass of water and feeling increasingly awkward. "I'm guessing you're Michael?" "Yeah, that's me," he replied without looking up from his phone. "Just give me a second to answer this text." From the table next to them, Lily noticed the father glance over with a slight frown. He caught her eye again and gave a small, sympathetic smile before turning his attention back to his daughter. Michael finally put his phone down and leaned back in his chair, giving Lily a once-over that made her feel like she was being appraised rather than appreciated. "So Anna says you're in nursing school?" "Yes, I'm in my final year," Lily answered, grateful for a normal conversation starter. "It's intense but rewarding. I'm specializing in pediatric care." Michael nodded, though she could tell he wasn't really interested. "Must be tough to make any decent money as a student. When I was in college, I started day trading. Made my first 10 grand before graduation." He flagged down a waiter. "You ready to order?" "I'm starving." The waiter approached, notepad in hand. "Can I get you something to drink to start?" "I'll have the Cabernet Sauvignon," Michael said without consulting Lily or looking at the wine list. "And I'll start with the calamari, then the ribeye steak, medium rare." The waiter turned to Lily, who felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. "Just water is fine for me," she said, then added hesitantly, "And maybe the side salad?" Michael looked at her with raised eyebrows. "That's all you're getting?" "I'm not that hungry," she lied, her $5 bill feeling very small in her pocket. The waiter nodded and walked away, while at the next table, the father helped his daughter pack up her homework as their food arrived. Lily couldn't help noticing how he made sure his daughter had everything she needed before serving himself, a small act of caring that stood in stark contrast to her date's behavior as Michael launched into another story about his investment successes. Lily wondered how she was going to get through this evening without either emptying her bank account or revealing just how broke she really was. She nodded and smiled at appropriate intervals, but her attention kept drifting to the father and daughter at the next table, who were sharing their meal and their day with genuine warmth and laughter. For a brief moment, the father looked over at her again, a flicker of concern crossing his face as he seemed to sense her discomfort. Lily quickly looked away, focusing back on Michael, who hadn't even noticed her distraction. She took a deep breath and prepared herself for what was already shaping up to be a very long dinner. Michael's wine arrived, and he took a long sip without offering Lily a taste. Not that she minded. She needed to keep her wits about her tonight, especially with her limited budget. The waiter placed a basket of bread on the table, and Lily gratefully took a piece, trying to quiet her rumbling stomach. "So as I was saying," Michael continued, barely pausing for breath, "my portfolio's grown nearly 20% this quarter alone. My advisor says I have a natural talent for picking winners." He buttered his bread generously, not noticing how Lily was savoring each small bite of hers. "What about you? Got any investments?" Lily nearly choked on her bread. "Investments?" She was living on ramen and store-brand cereal. "Not at the moment," she replied carefully. "Between tuition and rent, I'm focusing on getting through school first." Michael shrugged dismissively. "That's the problem with your generation. No financial vision. You should be thinking about retirement already." "My generation?" Lily blinked in confusion. "Aren't we the same age?" "I'm 26, he said, as if that made him significantly older and wiser. "But mentally, I'd say I'm about 45. I've always had an old soul when it comes to business." At the next table, the little girl giggled at something her father said, the sound bright and genuine. The father was cutting her chicken into bite-sized pieces, listening intently as she told him about something that had happened at school. Their easy rapport made Lily feel even more awkward about her own dinner companion, who hadn't asked her a single question about herself in the 15 minutes since he'd arrived. The calamari arrived, and Michael immediately helped himself to a large portion. He pushed the plate slightly toward Lily. "Want some?" She hesitated. "Maybe just 1 or 2 pieces, thanks." "You're not one of those girls who doesn't eat on dates, are you?" Michael asked, his mouth full. "That's so annoying." "No, I just—" Lily trailed off, not wanting to admit the truth. "I had a late lunch," she lied. "Good." Michael nodded approvingly. "My ex was always on some diet or another. Drove me crazy. A guy works up an appetite during the day, you know." "What kind of work do you do?" Lily asked, trying to steer the conversation away from his ex-girlfriend. "I'm in finance, obviously," he replied as if she should have known. "Junior investment analyst at Thompson & Brooks. It's entry level, but I'll be running the place in 5 years, mark my words." The father at the next table stood up, excusing himself to take his daughter to the restroom. As they passed by, the little girl smiled shyly at Lily, who returned the smile. The father nodded politely, and Lily couldn't help noticing the kindness in his eyes. So different from the calculating look in Michael's. "My roommate mentioned you work at a tech company?" Lily tried again to establish some common ground. "Oh, Anna got that wrong. I interviewed there but turned them down. The stock options weren't competitive enough." Michael waved his hand dismissively. "So nursing, huh? You must see some gross stuff." Before Lily could answer, the waiter returned with their main courses. Michael's ribeye steak, sizzling and aromatic, and Lily's small side salad. The contrast between their plates couldn't have been more obvious. "That's seriously all you're eating?" Michael frowned at her plate. "I'm really not that hungry," Lily repeated, feeling smaller by the minute. Your loss. Michael cut into his steak with enthusiasm. This looks amazing. The father and daughter returned to their table, the girl carefully climbing back into her seat. The father helped her adjust her napkin, then resumed their conversation, giving her his complete attention. Lily couldn't help but compare his attentiveness to Michael's self-absorption. So, anyway, Michael was saying between bites of his expensive steak, I told my boss that his strategy was outdated, and you know what? He actually listened to me, implemented my ideas the very next day. He grinned proudly. That's why I'm on the fast track there. Lily nodded, picking at her salad and trying to make it last. She was starving, but $5 wouldn't even cover the cost of this small plate of lettuce. She took another piece of bread from the basket, hoping it would help fill her up. You know what's crazy? Michael continued, oblivious to her discomfort. I almost canceled tonight. Had tickets to the basketball game with some clients, but they fell through at the last minute. Lucky for you, right? He laughed at his own joke. Very lucky, Lily murmured, not meaning it at all. She was beginning to wish she had canceled. She could be at home right now, studying in her pajamas with a cup of tea and whatever she could cobble together from her nearly empty refrigerator. From the corner of her eye, she noticed the father at the next table glance over again. He was cutting into a modest chicken dish, nothing as extravagant as Michael's steak, but he seemed far more content. The little girl was telling him about a science project she was working on, her face animated with excitement. Dad, we're going to make a volcano, and Miss Rivera says mine can be purple if I want, because science can be creative too. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart, the father replied with genuine interest. We'll need to get supplies this weekend. Maybe we can try a test run at home first? Their warm interaction made Lily smile despite her circumstances. She wondered what it would be like to have someone who listened that attentively to her, who cared about her thoughts and dreams. What are you looking at? Michael's question snapped her back to reality. Oh, nothing, Lily said quickly. Just thinking about a project I need to finish for school. School, right? Michael took another sip of his wine. How much longer until you're done with that? You know, nurses can make decent money once they specialize. My aunt's a nurse anesthetist, pulls in 6 figures. About 8 months until graduation, Lily answered. I'm hoping to work in pediatrics. Kids, huh? Not where the money is, Michael shook his head. You should consider plastic surgery. That's where the real cash is. Lily bit her lip, trying not to show her irritation. It's not all about money for me. I want to make a difference, Michael laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Everyone wants to make a difference until they have to pay a mortgage. Trust me, in 10 years you'll wish you'd listened to me. The waiter approached their table again. How is everything? Excellent, Michael replied, cutting off another large piece of steak. We'll need another basket of bread. Very good, sir. And for you, miss? Everything's fine, thank you, Lily said quietly, though her stomach was still growling. As the waiter walked away, Lily noticed the father at the next table paying his bill. The little girl was carefully putting her homework back into her backpack, chattering about what book they would read before bedtime. The father helped her with her jacket, his movements patient and kind. Michael continued talking about his investments, his voice growing louder as he finished his wine and ordered another glass. Lily found herself stealing glances at the father and daughter, envying their genuine connection, and wondering how she had ended up on such a miserable date. The father caught her eye once more as he stood to leave, and this time his expression seemed to hold a question. Was she okay? Lily managed a small smile, trying to convey that she was fine, though she wasn't sure she was convincing. The man hesitated for just a moment before his daughter tugged on his hand, eager to go home. As they walked past Lily's table, the little girl waved goodbye and Lily waved back, feeling an unexpected pang as they left the restaurant. Now she was truly stuck here with Michael, who was becoming more arrogant with each passing minute. You know what? Michael leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. I think you and I could have some real potential. You're pretty, you're going to have a stable career, and you don't talk too much. That's rare these days. Lily blinked, unsure whether to be offended or just laugh at his backhanded compliment. Before she could respond, the waiter appeared with the check, and her moment of amusement quickly turned to dread. The real challenge of the evening was about to begin. The waiter placed the check folder discreetly on the table between them. Lily's stomach twisted into knots as Michael reached for it, flipping it open with casual confidence. His eyes scanned the total and he let out a low whistle. Not bad for a decent meal, he remarked, though the amount was more than Lily's grocery budget for 2 weeks. He tapped his fingers on the table, then slid the check toward the center. So how do you want to handle this? Split it evenly? Lily felt her face grow hot.
Split it evenly?
He'd ordered an expensive steak, 2 glasses of wine and an appetizer, while she'd had water and a side salad. Even if she had the money, which she didn't, splitting the bill would be completely unfair. Actually, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, I only had the salad. Maybe we could just pay for what we each ordered. Michael's friendly expression hardened slightly. That's not really how dating works these days. It's the 21st century, equality and all that. Lily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I understand, but there's a big difference between what we ordered. Your meal was much more expensive than mine. Are you seriously nickel and diming this? Michael's voice took on an edge. It's just dinner. I'm not trying to be difficult, Lily said, feeling smaller by the second. It's just that I'm on a really tight budget right now with school and… Oh, I get it, Michael interrupted, leaning back in his chair with a smirk that made Lily wince. You're one of those girls who expects the guy to pay for everything. No, that's not it at all, Lily protested, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. I'm happy to pay for what I ordered. I just can't afford half of the total bill right now. Michael's expression shifted from irritation to disbelief. You can't afford your half of dinner? How broke are you exactly? The question hung in the air between them, harsh and humiliating. Lily looked down at her hands twisted together in her lap. She could lie, make up some excuse about forgetting her credit card or having an unexpected expense come up, but something in her was tired of pretending. I have $5, she admitted quietly. That's all I have until I get paid on Friday. Michael stared at her as if she had just confessed to having a contagious disease. $5? Are you kidding me? Why would you agree to go on a date if you're that poor? Each word felt like a slap. Lily fought back tears, refusing to cry in front of this man who clearly had no empathy or understanding. My roommate set this up, she explained, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I didn't know we'd be coming to a place like this. I should have suggested something else, and that's on me. But I'm not asking you to pay for me. I can put my salad on my emergency credit card. Emergency credit card, Michael repeated with a scoff. You know what? This was clearly a mistake. He pulled out his wallet and tossed 2 20s on the table. Not nearly enough to cover the bill. That should take care of my part. You figure out the rest. Lily gaped at him in shock. But that doesn't even cover your meal. Consider it my investment in this date, which turned out to be a bad one. Michael stood up, straightening his expensive jacket. Word of advice? Don't date until you can afford to. It's embarrassing. With that parting shot, he turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Lily sitting alone with an unpaid bill and crushing humiliation. She stared at the check, tears welling in her eyes despite her best efforts to hold them back. The total was over $70, and Michael had left just $40. The waiter approached cautiously, sensing the tension. Is everything okay, miss? I'm so sorry, Lily began, her voice shaking. My date left, and I don't think he left enough money for the bill. The waiter's expression softened with sympathy. Let me check with my manager about what we can do. As the waiter walked away, Lily pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Who could she call? Her roommate was at her parents' house for the weekend. Her few friends were just as broke as she was. She could try her emergency credit card, but she was already close to the limit after the car repair last month. A tear escaped, sliding down, and her cheek before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it away, but another followed and then another. She fumbled in her bag for a tissue, mortified to be crying in a public place but unable to control the flood of emotions. Humiliation, anger, and a bone-deep exhaustion from always struggling. Always counting pennies, always being one unexpected expense away from disaster. Excuse me. The deep, gentle voice startled her. Looking up through tear-blurred eyes, Lily saw the father from the next table standing beside her. She thought he had left with his daughter, but here he was, his expression kind and concerned. I'm sorry to intrude, he said softly, but I couldn't help noticing what happened. He glanced at the door where Michael had exited. Are you okay? Lily tried to compose herself, embarrassed that a stranger had witnessed her humiliation. I'm fine, she managed, though her voice betrayed her. Just a date gone wrong. The man nodded, understanding in his eyes. Very wrong from what I could see. You saw that? Lily winced, imagining how pathetic she must look. I think the whole restaurant saw it, he replied with a gentle honesty that somehow didn't sting. He didn't exactly leave quietly. Lily closed her eyes briefly, wishing the floor would open up and swallow her whole. Great, so everyone knows I'm too broke to pay for dinner. No, the man corrected her, his voice firm but kind. Everyone knows that guy was a complete jerk who left you with the bill. He hesitated for a moment, then gestured to the chair across from her. May I sit for a minute? Lily nodded, too drained to object. As the man sat down, she noticed his daughter standing a few feet away, clutching her backpack and watching with curious eyes. I'm Robert, he introduced himself. And that's my daughter Zoe. I'm Lily, she replied automatically, then added, You don't have to stay. I'll figure this out. Robert studied her face, his expression thoughtful rather than pitying. I'm sure you will. You strike me as someone who figures things out all the time. But maybe, just this once, you could use a little help. I can't accept money from a stranger, Lily protested, her pride somehow still intact despite everything. I'm not a stranger anymore, Robert pointed out with a small smile. I'm Robert, remember? And you're Lily, the nursing student who's specializing in pediatric care. Lily looked at him in surprise. You heard that? Your date wasn't exactly speaking quietly, Robert admitted. And my daughter was very impressed when she heard you want to be a pediatric nurse. She broke her arm last year, and the nurse who took care of her was her absolute hero. As if on cue, Zoe approached the table, her shyness overcome by curiosity. Did you really take care of sick kids? She asked, her eyes wide with admiration. Despite everything, Lily found herself smiling at the little girl. Not yet. I'm still in school, but that's what I want to do when I graduate. That's so cool, Zoe declared. When I broke my arm, the nurse gave me a purple cast and drew stars on it. She said I was the bravest girl she ever met. I bet you were, Lily agreed, her own troubles momentarily forgotten. The waiter returned, looking uncomfortable. Miss, I spoke with my manager about the situation. Robert stood up. Actually, I'd like to take care of the check. Sir? The waiter looked confused. No, please, Lily protested, her embarrassment flooding back. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to, Robert said simply. I want to, but why? Lily asked, bewildered. You don't even know me. Robert glanced at his daughter, then back at Lily. Because 8 years ago I was eating at a diner with Zoe, who was just a toddler then. I was a single dad, recently laid off down to my last $20. The waitress saw me calculating the tip down to the penny, and when I got the check, it had been taken care of. No explanation, just a note that said, it gets better. He smiled at the memory. And you know what? It did. So now when I can, I pass that kindness along. Lily was speechless, touched by his story and his gesture. Please, he continued gently, let me do this. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I've been where you are, and someday when you can, you'll do the same for someone else. Zoe tugged on her father's sleeve. Like the kindness chain we read about, Dad? Exactly like that, sweetheart. Robert nodded, then looked back at Lily. What do you say? Lily looked at their kind faces, then down at the bill that had caused her so much distress. Her pride warred with her practical side, but in the end, gratitude won out. She nodded slowly. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what else to say. You don't have to say anything else, Robert assured her, taking out his credit card and handing it to the waiter. Just remember this feeling, and someday, when you see someone struggling the way you are now, you'll know exactly what to do. As the waiter walked away with Robert's card, Lily felt something shift inside her. Not just relief from her immediate problem, but a warmth that came from experiencing genuine kindness from a stranger. After an evening of feeling small and insignificant, Robert's simple act of compassion had reminded her that there was still goodness in the world, and for the first time that evening, she felt like maybe things really would get better. You really don't have to wait with me, Lily said as they stood outside the restaurant. The night air had grown cooler and she pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. I know, Robert replied, but I'd feel better making sure you get home safely. It's getting late. Zoe yawned beside him, leaning against her father's side. Despite her obvious tiredness, she smiled up at Lily. Dad always says safety first. Your dad is very wise, Lily told her, then turned to Robert. But honestly, I'll be fine. I can catch the bus. The stop is just around the corner. Robert frowned slightly. The buses don't run very frequently this time of night. How far is your place? About 30 minutes by bus, Lily admitted. But I do it all the time. Let us give you a ride, Robert offered. It's no trouble, and honestly, it would make me feel better knowing you got home okay. Lily hesitated. She'd already accepted his help with the bill. Accepting a ride home felt like taking advantage of his kindness. Yet the thought of waiting at the bus stop for who knows how long, then making the long ride home after this emotional evening, was exhausting to contemplate. Are you sure? I don't want to put you out. We're sure, Robert said firmly. Right, Zoe? The little girl nodded enthusiastically. Plus, I want to hear more about being a nurse. Lily couldn't help smiling at Zoe's enthusiasm. Well, if you're both sure, completely sure, Robert confirmed. Our car is this way. They walked through the parking lot to a sensible mid-range sedan. Nice, but not flashy. Robert helped Zoe into the back seat, making sure she was buckled in properly before opening the passenger door for Lily. Thank you, she said quietly as she slid into the seat. For everything. You're welcome, he replied simply, closing her door before walking around to the driver's side. As they pulled out of the parking lot, an awkward silence filled the car. Lily wasn't sure what to say to this man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. Finally, she settled on the basics. I live in Westfield Heights near the university. Is that out of your way? Not at all, Robert assured her. We're in Oakwood, just past there. Oakwood, Lily repeated, picturing the nice family neighborhood about 15 minutes from her student apartment building. That's a lovely area. We like it, Robert agreed. Good schools, and Zoe can ride her bike to the park. From the back seat, Zoe piped up. Dad, can Lily see my science project when it's done? Since she knows about medicine and stuff? Robert glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. Zoe, Lily probably has a very busy schedule with her nursing school. It's okay, Lily said, touched by the girl's request. I'd love to see your project sometime. What's it about? The human heart, Zoe declared proudly. We're making models in science class. Mine's going to show all the chambers and valves and everything. That sounds amazing, Lily said genuinely. The heart is fascinating. Did you know it pumps about 5 liters of blood through your body every minute? Zoe's eyes widened. Whoa, really? That's like a lot of milk jugs. Lily laughed, feeling some of the evening's tension melt away. Exactly. And it does that your whole life without taking a break. Not even when you're sleeping? Zoe asked, incredulous. Not even then, Lily confirmed. It's always working. Wow, Zoe breathed, clearly impressed. I'm definitely putting that in my report. Robert smiled at their interaction. Zoe's teacher is encouraging them to interview an expert for their projects. Sounds like you'd be perfect. I'm hardly an expert, Lily demurred, still learning myself. But you know way more than me or Dad, Zoe insisted. Please? There was something so earnest in the little girl's request that Lily couldn't bring herself to refuse. If your dad's okay with it, I'd be happy to help. Really? Zoe bounced excitedly in her seat. Dad, is that okay? Robert nodded, a warm smile crossing his face. Of course. Maybe we could exchange numbers and you two could set something up, if that's not too forward. He added quickly to Lily. No, that would be fine. Lily agreed, surprised at how comfortable she felt with the idea. There was something trustworthy about Robert, a genuineness that stood in stark contrast to Michael's slick persona. They drove for a few minutes in comfortable silence, the city lights sliding past the windows. Lily found herself studying Rob. Ert's profile as he concentrated on the road. He had kind eyes, she decided, and the gentle way he spoke to his daughter revealed so much about his character. So, Robert broke the silence. Other than going on terrible blind dates, what do you do for fun? When you're not studying, I mean. Lily laughed softly at his description of her evening. Fun? I vaguely remember that concept. She thought for a moment. Honestly, between classes, clinical rotations, and my part-time job, there isn't much time for anything else. But I love to read when I can, and I volunteer at the Children's Hospital twice a month. You volunteer on top of everything else? Robert sounded impressed. That's dedication. Lily shrugged, a little embarrassed by his praise. It reminds me why I'm working so hard. When you see a child who's been in pain finally smile because of something you did, even something small, it makes all the long nights studying worth it. Robert nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's how I feel about my work too. What do you do? Lily realized she knew nothing about him beyond the fact that he was a kind single father. I run a software company, he answered. We develop educational programs for kids with learning differences. Really? Lily turned to look at him with new interest. That's amazing. It's rewarding, Robert acknowledged. I started it when Zoe was diagnosed with dyslexia. The resources out there were either too clinical or too childish. Nothing that really engaged her while helping her learn. So you created your own, Lily concluded, impressed. Dad made games that were actually fun, Zoe chimed in from the backseat, not boring like school stuff. And now lots of kids use them. That's wonderful, Lily said sincerely. Making a difference like that, Robert glanced at her. Isn't that what you're doing too? Making a difference in children's lives? Trying to, Lily agreed. That's the goal anyway. Dad says goals are important, Zoe declared sleepily from the back seat. You have to know where you're going. Your dad is full of wisdom, Lily smiled, catching Robert's eye. He returned her smile, and something warm flickered between them, a moment of connection and mutual respect. The car slowed as they approached Lily's neighborhood. It's the building on the left, she directed, the one with the faded blue trim. Robert pulled up in front of her apartment building, a worn but decent complex that housed mostly students. He put the car in park but left the engine running. Thank you for the ride, Lily said, suddenly feeling awkward again. And for dinner. And for, well, just being kind when you didn't have to be. It was my pleasure, Robert replied sincerely. And I meant what I said about Zoe's project. If you're really willing to help her, she'd be thrilled. I'd love to, Lily confirmed, reaching into her bag for her phone. Should we exchange numbers? They quickly traded contact information, the simple act feeling somehow significant in the quiet car. Dad, came Zoe's drowsy voice from the back seat. We should invite Lily for pizza night. She probably eats ramen all the time like you did in college. Lily laughed, both amused and touched by the child's perceptiveness. How did you know about the ramen? Dad says all college students live on ramen and coffee, Zoe explained through a yawn. She's not wrong, Lily admitted, then turned to Robert. You've raised a very observant daughter. Too observant sometimes, Robert replied with a fond look at his sleepy child. But she's right about the pizza night too. We do it every Friday. Very casual, just homemade pizza and board games. You'd be welcome to join us sometime if you'd like. The invitation was casual, with no pressure behind it. Yet Lily felt a flutter of something hopeful in her chest. After tonight's disaster with Michael, she should be swearing off any sort of social engagement, yet there was something about Robert and Zoe that made her want to say yes. I'd like that, she found herself saying. Thank you. Great, Robert smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that made them crinkle at the corners. I'll text you the details. Perfect. Lily opened her door, stepping out into the night. Good night, Zoe, she called softly to the back seat, where the little girl was fighting to keep her eyes open. Night, Nurse Lily, Zoe mumbled, the title making Lily's heart warm. Good night. Robert, she added, meeting his gaze one more time. And thank you again. Good night, Lily, he replied. Get some rest. She closed the car door and walked toward her building, turning back once to wave as they drove away. As she climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, she marveled at how differently the evening had ended from how she had expected. What had started as a humiliating disaster had somehow turned into, what? The beginning of a friendship, at least. Letting herself into her tiny apartment, Lily kicked off her shoes and sank onto her second-hand sofa, too tired to even change her clothes. Her phone buzzed with a text, and she half expected it to be her roommate asking how the date had gone. Instead, she saw Robert's name on the screen. Just making sure you got in safely. Zoe is already planning interview questions about the heart for you. Fair warning. Lily smiled at the message, a feeling of warmth spreading through her chest. She typed back quickly. Safely home, thank you. Tell Zoe I'm looking forward to her questions. I'll bring my stethoscope so she can hear her own heartbeat. His reply came almost immediately. You just made her year. She'll be talking about this for days. Lily hugged her phone to her chest for a moment, then set it aside to change into her pajamas. As she brushed her teeth, She caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror and was surprised to see herself smiling. After everything that had happened tonight, somehow she was smiling. Maybe, she thought as she climbed into bed, sometimes the worst dates really can lead to something unexpected. Not necessarily romance, it was far too soon to think about that, but connection. Real human connection. The kind that reminded you that there were still good people in the world. People who would help a stranger simply because they could. With that comforting thought, Lily drifted off to sleep, the memory of Michael's cruelty fading as she focused instead on the kindness of the father and daughter who had turned her terrible evening into something unexpectedly beautiful. 3 months had passed since that fateful night at the restaurant. The winter chill had given way to the first warm breezes of spring, and Lily's life had transformed in ways she never could have predicted. She hurried across the company parking lot, her nursing textbook tucked under her arm. After her last class of the day, she'd driven straight to the offices of Kid Tech Educational Software, Robert's company, where she now worked part-time in their wellness center. The position had come about unexpectedly, just 2 weeks after their first meeting, when Robert mentioned that his company was looking for someone with medical training to staff their employee wellness room. It's mostly basic, first aid and health education for our staff, he'd explained, over pizza with Zoe that first Friday night she'd visited their home. But we need someone with actual knowledge, not just a person with a first aid certificate. The job was perfect, flexible hours that worked around her class schedule, better pay than the campus coffee shop, and relevant experience for her resume. Lily had been overwhelmed by the opportunity but determined to prove herself based on her skills. Not because Robert felt sorry for her, and she had proven herself. In just 3 months, she'd revamped the wellness center, created health education materials for employees, and even helped develop content for a new app about human anatomy for children with learning differences. Her professors were impressed with how she was already applying her education in a professional setting. As she approached the modern glass building, Lily caught her reflection in the windows. Gone was the anxious student in the thrift store blouse. She still budgeted carefully, but with her improved salary, she no longer counted pennies quite so desperately. Today she wore neat navy slacks and a professional blouse, her hair pulled back in a simple style that framed her face. She looked confident because she was. "Hey, Lily," called a friendly voice as she entered the lobby. Tom, the security guard, waved from his desk. "How were classes today?" "Challenging," Lily replied with a smile. "We're studying pediatric emergency response scenarios. Pretty intense stuff." "Well, if anyone can handle it, you can," Tom said with genuine warmth. "Oh, and Zoe's already here. She came in with Robert after her dentist appointment." "Thanks for the heads up," Lily nodded, signing in on the electronic tablet. In the 3 months she'd worked here, she'd become part of the Kid Tech family, known and welcomed by everyone from the cleaning staff to the senior developers. As she made her way to the wellness center on the 2nd floor, she thought about how her relationship with Robert and Zoe had evolved. What had started as an act of kindness from a stranger had blossomed into a deep friendship. Lily had become a regular visitor at their home, helping Zoe with her heart project, which earned an A+ and a special mention from her teacher, joining them for movie nights, and even attending Zoe's school play. Robert had become someone she could talk to about anything, her struggles with difficult classes, her dreams for the future, even her fears about graduating and entering the real world of medicine. He listened without judgment, offered advice without condescension, and supported her ambitions wholeheartedly. And Zoe, sweet, precocious Zoe, had attached herself to Lily with the unrestrained affection only a child can give. She proudly told everyone that Lily was a real nurse, despite Lily's gentle corrections that she was still a student, saved her science questions for their time together, and had recently announced that when she grew up, she wanted to be smart and kind like Lily. The thought still made Lily's heart swell. As she rounded the corner to the wellness center, she heard Zoe's excited voice before she saw her. "But when will she be here? I want to show her my tooth." "She'll be here soon, sweetheart," came Robert's patient reply. "Remember, she had class today." "I'm right here," Lily announced, pushing open the door with a smile. "What's this about a tooth? Lily!" Zoe launched herself across the room, nearly knocking Lily over with the force of her hug. "I lost another tooth, see?" She grinned widely, showing the new gap in her smile. "Wow, that's a big one." Lily exclaimed, setting down her bag to give the girl her full attention. Did the dentist say everything looks good? Yep, and I didn't have any cavities, Zoe reported proudly. Dad says it's because I'm good at brushing now. Excellent job, Lily high-fived her, then looked up to see Robert watching them with a warm smile. Their eyes met over Zoe's head, and Lily felt the now familiar flutter in her chest that occurred whenever he looked at her that way. How was class? He asked, moving closer. Good, Lily replied. Challenging, but good. We're preparing for our final clinical rotations. You'll ace them, Robert said with complete confidence. You always do. His faith in her abilities still surprised Lily sometimes. Unlike Michael, who had dismissed her career choice as not lucrative enough, Robert genuinely respected her work and her goals. He asked thoughtful questions about her studies and celebrated her successes as if they were his own. Dad, can Lily come to dinner tonight? Zoe asked, still holding on to Lily's hand. Please, we can show her the new game. Robert glanced at Lily. Only if she's not too tired after classes and work. I'd love to, Lily said honestly. Evenings at Robert and Zoe's home had become her favorite way to unwind after long days of studying and working. Their cozy house felt more like home than her own apartment sometimes. Great. Zoe bounced on her toes. I'm going to go tell Ms. Rita in the break room. She gave me a sugar-free lollipop for being brave at the dentist. As Zoe darted out of the room, Robert moved closer to Lily. You really don't have to come if you're tired, he said softly. I know you had a full day. I want to, Lily assured him. Being with you and Zoe never feels like an obligation. It's the best part of my day. Something shifted in Robert's expression, a softening, a warmth that made Lily's heart beat a little faster. Over the past months, they had carefully navigated the evolving nature of their relationship, moving slowly from friendly acquaintances to close friends to something more. Neither had put a label on it yet, but Lily had felt the change, the growing connection between them that went beyond friendship. I was hoping you'd say that, Robert admitted, because there's something I wanted to talk to you about tonight. After Zoe goes to bed, Lily raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. Sounds serious. Not serious, Robert corrected with a small smile. Just important. Before Lily could ask what he meant, Zoe burst back into the room, chattering excitedly about the dessert they would have after dinner. The moment passed, but the promise of something important lingered in Lily's mind as she began her afternoon work at the wellness center. Hours later, after a delicious dinner of homemade lasagna, Lily had contributed the salad, her cooking skills still a work in progress, and an energetic demonstration of Zoe's new educational game. The little girl was finally tucked into bed. Lily had read her a chapter of their current bedtime story, a ritual that had developed naturally over her frequent visits. One more chapter, Zoe pleaded, her eyelids already drooping despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Tomorrow, Lily promised, smoothing the girl's hair back from her forehead. We'll find out what happens to the dragon then. Okay, Zoe agreed reluctantly. Lily, are you going to be here tomorrow too? The question held an innocence that made Lily's heart ache with tenderness. I have a morning shift at the wellness center, she confirmed, so you'll see me after school. Satisfied with this answer, Zoe snuggled deeper under her covers. Night, Lily, love you. The words spoken so naturally caught Lily by surprise. Zoe had never said them before, though her affection had been clear in countless other ways. Emotion welled in Lily's throat as she leaned down to kiss the girl's forehead. I love you too, Zoe, she whispered, meaning it completely. Sweet dreams. She turned off the bedside lamp, leaving only the small nightlight glowing softly, and quietly left the room. Robert was waiting in the hallway, having overheard the exchange. His expression was soft, vulnerable in a way Lily had rarely seen. She said it first to me when she was 3, he said quietly as they walked downstairs together. Knock the wind right out of me. I know the feeling, Lily agreed, still processing the warmth that had spread through her chest at Zoe's words. They settled in the living room, Robert pouring them each a glass of wine from a bottle they had opened with dinner. The house was peaceful, the soft glow of lamps creating a cozy atmosphere that felt worlds away from the sterile restaurant where they had first met. It's hard to believe it's been 3 months, Lily mused, accepting the glass he offered. Since the worst blind date in history? Robert teased, sitting beside her on the comfortable sofa. Lily laughed. I still can't believe you witnessed that whole train wreck. I'm glad I did, Robert said, his tone turning serious. Otherwise, I might never have met you. Lily met his gaze, the sincerity in his eyes making her heart race. I'm glad too, even if it was mortifying at the time. You know, Robert began, setting his wine glass on the coffee table. I've been thinking a lot about that night, about how sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best changes in our lives. Like when you got laid off and ended up starting your own company? Lily suggested. Exactly, Robert nodded. And like you being on the worst date ever and ending up... He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Here, Lily supplied softly. With you and Zoe. With us, Robert agreed. He took a deep breath as if gathering his courage. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about tonight. Where you fit with us, with me. Lily's pulse quickened. Robert. These past 3 months have been amazing, he continued, his eyes never leaving hers. Watching you with Zoe, seeing how naturally you fit into our lives. Getting to know you. Your determination, your compassion, your strength. I've never met anyone like you, Lily. He reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. I know this might seem fast, but I also know what I feel. I'm falling in love with you. Actually, that's not quite right. I've already fallen. The words hung in the air between them, a declaration that Lily had hoped for but hadn't dared expect so soon. Her heart seemed to expand in her chest, filled with a joy so intense it was almost painful. I'm not asking for any promises, Robert continued when she didn't immediately respond. I know you're focused on finishing school, on building your career. I would never want to distract from that. But I wanted you to know how I feel, and that whenever you're ready, if you feel the same way, I'm here. Zoe and I both are. Lily looked at their intertwined hands, then back up at Robert's face, his kind eyes, the slight nervousness in his expression as he waited for her response. She thought about the night they met, how one act of kindness had changed the course of her life. She thought about Zoe's love you and how natural it had felt to say it back. I feel the same way, she said simply, the words coming easily because they were true. I've been falling for you too, for both of you. You've become the most important people in my life, and that terrifies me and thrills me at the same time. Relief and joy washed over Robert's face. So what does that mean for us? Lily squeezed his hand. It means we take it one day at a time. I do have to focus on finishing school, but that doesn't mean we can't build something together while I do. If you're willing to be patient with my crazy schedule for a little longer, I'd wait as long as it takes, Robert assured her. We both would. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but Lily met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was sweet and tender, filled with promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Lily couldn't stop smiling. You know, she said softly, when I was sitting in that restaurant with $5 in my pocket, watching my date walk out on me, I never imagined I'd end up here. Life's funny that way, Robert agreed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. One moment you're at your lowest, and the next everything changes. Because of kindness, Lily added. Your kindness, Robert shook his head slightly. Not just mine. Your kindness to Zoe, your dedication to helping others, that's what made me fall for you. That's what makes you special, Lily. From upstairs came the sound of Zoe's bedroom door opening, followed by small footsteps in the hallway. A moment later, a sleepy Zoe appeared at the bottom of the stairs, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I had a bad dream, she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Robert and Lily exchanged a look of understanding before Robert stood up. Come here, sweetie, he said, opening his arms. But instead of going to her father, Zoe surprised them both by climbing onto the couch and curling up against Lily. Can you tell me a story? A happy one. Lily wrapped her arm around the little girl, her heart full to bursting. Of course I can, she said softly. How about the story of a girl who only had $5 for a date, and the amazing father and daughter who changed her life? Zoe looked up with sleepy curiosity. Is it a real story? Lily met Robert's gaze over Zoe's head, seeing in his eyes the same happiness that filled her own heart. The most real story I know, she promised. And the best part is it's still being written. As she began to tell their story in simple terms Zoe could understand, Lily marveled at how life could change in an instant, how one small moment of kindness could lead to something so beautiful and unexpected. 3 months ago, she had been a struggling student, counting pennies and feeling alone. Now she was here, surrounded by love, with a future full of possibilities stretching out before her. And it had all started with a terrible blind date and just $5 in her pocket.